Welcome back to The Life with the Browns. Nobody expected Mary Brown to speak. For days, she sat in that courtroom like a ghost, silent, calm, unreadable. Christine had dropped bombshell after bombshell, binders full of color-coded financials, secret bank transfers, emails stamped confidential that had never been shared with the other wives. Robin had sobbed, Cody had screamed, and Janelle had already given her testimony. But Mary simply watched. Not like someone detached, but like someone who already knew. Like someone who had been carrying the truth long before anyone dared to put it on the record. That morning, as Christine rose again with a thick binder clutched in her hands, prepared to deliver her final statement before the court recessed for lunch, the unexpected happened. Mary stood. Not hurried, not nervous, steady, deliberate. Each click of her heels on the polished courtroom floor echoed like a drumbeat in the silence. The judge looked up, startled. Christine froze, her eyes wide. Even Cody, who had been scribbling furiously on a yellow legal pad, stopped mid-word. The entire courtroom turned toward her as Mary raised her hand and spoke in a calm but unshakable voice. "Can I speak?" She didn't shout. She didn't beg. But the weight of her words demanded attention. The judge adjusted his glasses and nodded. "You may." In that instant, the energy shifted. The courtroom was no longer Christine's battlefield alone. Mary, long dismissed as compliant, silent, and detached, was about to speak. And everyone knew this wasn't going to be polished or rehearsed. It wasn't going to be for cameras or sympathy. It was going to be the truth. She walked forward with slow confidence, turning not just to the judge but to the entire gallery. Her voice rang out, strong, steady. "For 13 years," she began, "I told myself that silence was strength. That if I didn't stir up trouble, I wasn't the one responsible for the breakdown of this family." Christine's binder slipped from her fingers. Janelle gripped the bench in front of her. Robin's face drained of color. And for the first time in the entire trial, Cody squirmed in his seat. Mary's eyes locked on him. "But I wasn't strong. I was the first one you pushed to the edge. The first you asked to smile as I fell." Her tone cut like glass. Robin blinked rapidly, caught between tears and outrage. The court stenographer's fingers hesitated mid-keystroke. "I was the lawful wife," Mary continued. "The one whose name you used to sign documents, open trusts, secure loans, file taxes. And yet I never saw where the money went. I was excluded from every account, every transaction, every decision." She paused, then pulled a plain manila folder from her bag. Not dramatic, not colorful, just quiet evidence. She held up a form. "In 2019, I found this in our family files. A revocation of access. It removed me, Christine, and Janelle from any financial power over the common accounts. 4 signature lines. Only 2 were signed. Yours, Cody, and yours, Robin." Her gaze moved, piercing directly into Robin's eyes. "Am I supposed to believe that was a mistake?" Robin opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Cody shifted again, his jaw clenched. "I didn't speak then," Mary pressed on, her voice colder now. "Because he told me if I asked questions, the children would think I was destroying the family." The judge leaned forward, his hands folded. Mary handed the form to the bailiff. "You can match the signatures to the 2020 LLC documents. The handwriting is the same. It is his, it is true." Cody whispered furiously to his attorney, whose face drained of all color. The judge scanned the form, then raised a brow. "This was signed without witness or notary. That will be addressed." Cody's lawyer rose to object, but the judge raised a finger. "Sit." The room held its breath. Christine brushed her hand against Mary's in silent recognition. The wives were no longer divided. Mary's voice broke the silence again. That wasn't the only one. There were transfer requests, statements redirected from our shared P.O. box to a private Flagstaff address. All of it leading up to the refinancing of the family trust. The judge nodded to the clerk. "Pull the 2020 refinancing file. Compare the signatures." Robin leaned toward Cody, whispering in panic. He shook his head. Too late. Mary's eyes darkened. "He said I was paranoid. That I didn't need to bother with details. That Robin was the only one with a stable enough score to handle the accounts. And I trusted him until..." She took a breath, her voice dropping lower. "Until I saw my name on a lien I never signed." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Christine's jaw fell open. Janelle scowled, fists clenched. "A lien?" the judge repeated. Mary nodded. "Against the Las Vegas property. Filed in 2021. My name was used as co-owner of a debt I never consented to. And when that property sold, I didn't see a penny. The money went straight into an account under Robin's name, signed with my legal signature. Cody's face went pale. His attorney froze. The judge leaned back slowly, eyes narrowing. Do you have that filing? Mary's answer was simple, cold, certain. Yes, Your Honor, and this time I will not be silent. Yes, Your Honor, and this time I will not be silent. Welcome back to Life with the Browns. Mary adjusted her stance, her fingers never trembling as she reached once more into that unassuming manila folder, the same one she had carried in with the quiet dignity of a woman underestimated for too long. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled out another sheet. The courtroom seemed to inhale as one. I do, she said, her tone controlled but heavy with the gravity of revelation. And I have a copy of the wire transfer that was made. The account that this was sent to has a single owner. Her head lifted, eyes locked not on Cody, not on the judge, but directly on Robin. The effect was immediate. The air itself shifted. It wasn't the kind of shock that elicited gasps or whispers. No, this was the far heavier silence of recognition, the kind that falls over a room when the truth, long suspected, suddenly steps out into daylight. Robin jolted upright, her chair screeching across the polished floor like nails dragged across a coffin. That was a joint family account. She cried, voice high, frayed at the edges. Sit down. The judge's voice was thunder, sharper, louder than it had been at any point in the trial. The command struck through the air like a gavel before the gavel. Robin hesitated, then sank slowly back into her seat, her face pale. Across the room, Cody did not move. His pen hung frozen, ink blotting his half-written notes. Mary inhaled deeply, her chest rising, but when she exhaled, it wasn't weariness, it was release. That, she said softly but firmly, was the moment I stopped being afraid of the truth. Because I knew. If they would bind me to debt I never agreed to, they were never planning to give me, or any of us, a future. The words struck like iron dropped on stone. The judge leaned forward, peering at her with grave respect. Thank you, Mrs. Brown, he said slowly. We'll have a short recess while this is checked. But no one stood, not even the judge himself. The papers rested before him, but his eyes, like the rest of the courtroom, remained locked on Mary. Because in that instant, everyone knew she was not merely testifying. She was unraveling years of deception, tearing apart a carefully woven tapestry one signature at a time. When court resumed after recess, the air had thickened. Gone was the side chatter, the faint shuffling of notes, the glances passed between attorneys. Now, the chamber felt like a minefield, every step measured, every breath weighted. Christine clutched her binder, visibly shaken. Not because she doubted Mary, but because she recognized the ground-shattering magnitude of what had just occurred. Mary wasn't just supporting Christine's battle anymore. She was opening a whole new front of war with evidence Christine herself had never even possessed. The judge returned, the court clerk beside him, carrying a small stack of documents. In his hand, the lean filing, the wire transfer record, the 2020 refinancing documents. Each had been cross-checked, scrutinized, verified. The judge cleared his throat. After authenticating, the signatures align. The fund transfer was executed 2 days after the Las Vegas property transaction. And the receiving account, his gaze swung to Robin, is held solely by Mrs. Robin Brown. The room erupted, not in noise but in tension. Cody remained motionless, lips pressed so tightly they drained of color. Robin leaned forward, her eyes wide, darting helplessly to her attorney. Mrs. Brown, the judge addressed Robin directly. Did you sign for this wire? Robin faltered. Her voice cracked as she stammered, I was told it was temporary. For taxes. He said it was for planning. You signed it. The judge's words were firm, final. You signed for the receiving account. You bound Mary to a debt she never knew existed. That is not tax planning. That is misrepresentation. Christine turned to Mary in silent awe. Not because she doubted the discovery, but because Mary had waited. Waited until the moment no one could bury her words under denial. Until the truth was undeniable. And Mary, calm as ever, delivered her final blow. There is more, she said. The room stopped breathing. Even the reporters, who had been scribbling relentlessly until then, put their pens down. In 2022, Mary continued, her voice cutting through the stillness, I was sent a copy of a new postnuptial agreement, not the one we signed in 2014, a revised one. It included a new clause. All real estate reassignment actions will prioritize the surviving spouse or primary beneficiary in cases of financial default. Her voice dipped lower, dangerous now, and only one name appeared under that clause: Robbins. The silence shattered like glass. The judge's face drained of color as if someone had stolen the oxygen from the room. "Where did you obtain this?" Mary lifted her chin. "From the Dropbox. The one he believed I no longer had access to. It was labeled draft, do not file. But it was digitally signed. And the metadata shows it was exported from Robin's laptop." Robin covered her face with trembling hands. Janelle stiffened, her jaw clenched. Christine's hands shook. Mary did not falter. "Your Honor," she declared, her voice unwavering, "it wasn't just about taking the money. It was about erasing us. Erasing everything we built. And making us smile while they did it. This wasn't faith. This wasn't family. This was fraud." The judge rose from his chair, each movement deliberate. "If this document is verified and tied to the accounts in question, it will change the entire scope of this case." For the first time, Cody opened his mouth, yet no sound emerged. His bluster, his fury, his volume, gone. The loudest voice in the room now was Mary's. She laid the final page onto the clerk's desk without even glancing back. That single act, quiet and devastating, would be remembered not as the moment she revealed lies, but as the moment she redefined her place in history. Not Cody's footnote. Not Robin's rival. But the last chapter Cody never wanted written. The bailiff's footsteps echoed as he carried the damning document across the room. The metadata confirmed it. Exported at 3:45 a.m. on a MacBook registered to Robin Brown. That one digital fingerprint obliterated the excuse of accident. This wasn't mismanagement. It wasn't confusion. It was deliberate. Cody slumped into his chair, the weight of years of deception finally breaking his shoulders. Robin, her tears silent now, realized crying could no longer shield her. Mary stepped forward again, her eyes sharp as knives. "You never thought I'd find it. You thought once you had the spiritual divorce, once you'd reduced me to nothing, I'd fade away. But I wasn't sulking. I wasn't sleeping. I was saving. Every unsigned contract. Every wire transfer. Every buried receipt." Her gaze cut to Cody, then to Robin. "You called me jealous. You called me paranoid. You told the others I was too bitter to let go. But now I see I wasn't holding on too tight. I was the only one still clinging to the truth." The room didn't breathe. Robin whispered, desperate, "I didn't know what I was signing." "That is a lie." Mary's voice exploded, a slap of sound that ricocheted off the courtroom walls. Even the judge didn't interrupt. "You said you didn't get the money, but you were the one sitting in the meetings with the accountants. You were the one arranging the filings. You were the one who hid the returns. You planned this, and you thought we would be too broken to fight back." Silence, absolute silence. And then Christine, her hand trembling, reached out to grip Mary's arm, not as comfort, but as recognition. Recognition that this was no longer just testimony. This was judgment, and Mary was delivering it. This was judgment, and Mary was delivering it. The courtroom held its breath as Mary's voice, quiet but steel-edged, reached the judge. "I'm not the loud one. I'm not the rebel. But I am the one legally bound to every contract that has hurt us. And I am here to undo that damage, even if it means undoing the marriage that made it possible." The judge nodded slowly, carefully. "Your statement has been entered into the official record, Mrs. Brown. The court recognizes this evidence as material. Moving forward, your voice will be heard with full standing." A long exhale rippled through Christine. The woman they had once thought would never speak, the quiet, compliant Mary, had just rewritten the entire trajectory of this trial. One document, one timestamp, one signature. Buried truths clawing their way to the surface, and Mary was holding the scalpel. As Mary stepped back, the room still vibrated with the aftershock of her words. The energy of the trial had shifted. It was no longer just Cody versus Christine. No longer a public unraveling of a spiritual family turned corporate entity. Now it was something else entirely. Something far more perilous for Cody, for Robin, and for all the signed agreements they had cloaked in the language of unity. The judge adjusted his robe, trying to maintain composure. This was no longer a domestic dispute. It was a meticulously calculated exposure of contractual fraud and manipulated consent. "We will return with witness testimony," he said, tapping the file in front of him. "Mrs. Brown, you will remain in readiness for recall." Mary nodded once, silent. Before she could even move, Christine rose, her hands trembling. "Your Honor," she said, voice shaky but resolute. "I'd like to give my remaining time to Mary." The courtroom blinked. Even the judge was momentarily caught off guard. "You're sure?" he asked. "You've waited 3 weeks for your testimony." Christine's eyes never left Mary. "I am," she said firmly, "because what she will say tells more about what really happened than any binder ever could." The judge hesitated, then looked to Mary. "You may proceed." Cody's attorney tried to interject. "Objection, she is not an expert witness. She is a legal signatory on every document in question," the judge interrupted sharply. "She is more than qualified." Mary rose again, this time slower. Each step, each motion, carried the weight of years of silence she had swallowed, now laid bare for the world. "You think I didn't want to leave," she said, voice tight but commanding. "Not the court, but the past. You think I stayed because I didn't know better. I did, but I lacked evidence, so I stayed to obtain it." Her anger rose, curling around every word. "You all signed documents believing I was out of the picture, believing my silence was consent, that I didn't notice the changes, name changes in the LLC, from tenancy in common to tenancy in severalty. That liabilities stayed attached to the wives while assets flowed solely through Robin." She pulled another piece of paper from the folder. "This is a 2017 statement. It shows utilities for the Vegas house were billed to Christine, but the reimbursement came from a business checking account Robin had sole access to. That money wasn't spent on bills. It was used for a Flagstaff down payment 2 years before we relocated." Christine gasped. "That was my money!" Mary nodded, resolute. "We all lost money, but I lost my name. My signature was used like a tool. All papers I signed, thinking I was doing something for the family, were shielding a single individual." Robin shook her head, trying to speak. Mary turned sharply, cutting through the air like a knife. "You wept when I inquired about the refinancing check. You said, 'I don't know, I just sign what he leaves on my desk.' But you did know, because the money that removed my name and put yours on the deed, that was mine." The judge swiveled, voice steady but incredulous. "Is this the same account involved in the May 2021 title transfer?" "Yes," Mary replied, her tone like steel. "And I have the bank record." Last login was from Robin's IP address. For the first time, Robin looked truly broken. Not caught, broken, because someone she assumed would remain silent had come armed with evidence. The judge instructed a 10-minute recess, but the gallery remained frozen. Every eye fixed on Mary, every mind grappling with the weight of her words. She wasn't merely testifying. She was indicting an entire system of betrayal wrapped in spiritual language, disguised as family loyalty. When court resumed, the judge's tone had stripped disbelief away, replaced with meticulous scrutiny. "Mrs. Brown," he said, direct and controlled, "this court will review all documents you've submitted in full discovery. Until then, you are not to speak publicly about this case, online or otherwise." Mary nodded, expression unreadable, but her eyes spoke volumes. She had said what needed to be said. And if cornered, she could say much more. Christine, visibly shaken, sat clutching her binder, the foundation of her case for 3 weeks. But now it was clear. Mary had her own archive, and it included signatures, metadata, login history, and most damning of all, receipts tied to spiritual betrayal masquerading as family trust. Cody finally spoke, rigid. "Can I respond to that?" The judge allowed it briefly. Cody cleared his throat, but his fire had vanished. "I never meant to mislead Mary," he said, voice measured, pleading. "She is embellishing. These were complicated maneuvers for the family's future. Robin was the only one positioned to manage it. Credit, legal savvy, bandwidth." Mary did not blink. She could have approached me. Instead, she waited until here to ambush me with allegations. She is rewriting history. And then, quietly, deliberately, Mary handed the bailiff another document. The courtroom descended into a breathless silence. The judge's brow furrowed instantly. "What is this?" Mary spoke with calm authority. "It is the internal ledger for the Brown Family Holdings account. The one Robin used to pay the Flagstaff mortgage. I wasn't supposed to see it. It was sent to my email by accident in January 2021. Christine leaned forward, astonished. "I noticed this name." "That account?" Mary confirmed. "I noticed it once on a statement Cody told me not to worry about. This ledger depicts several transfers from a shared account into Robin's individual savings." "Why?" "That is what I asked," Mary said softly. "And I was told it was just Robin helping herself stay afloat. The only one not emotionally unstable." Janelle's jaw clenched. Christine's face burned red. But Mary's voice cut through it all. "The ledger says otherwise. She helped herself with money marked shared." Robin, trembling, protested. "I didn't keep anything they didn't agree to." "They knew," Mary replied sharply. "They didn't mind. Until it became convenient to play victims." The judge pounded his gavel. "That is enough. Bailiff, check that ledger. Verify timestamps, deposits, IP logins, cross-reference everything." And in that moment, the courtroom understood. Mary Brown was no longer silent. She was the reckoning. Mary Brown was no longer silent. She was the reckoning. The judge leaned over the bench, scanning the latest documents Mary had presented. "Check these against the 2021 family tax return," he instructed, his tone clipped but precise. Then his eyes flicked up to Mary. "Where did you obtain this?" Mary didn't smile. She didn't need to. From the depths of a plain folder, a spark of quiet vindication gleamed in her eyes. "It was retrieved by a forensic technician I hired myself last year," she stated, her voice calm, measured, yet carrying the weight of years of silent preparation. The courtroom stilled. Not a gasp, not a murmur. Just that heavy, electric quiet that descends when everyone in the room suddenly realizes the truth they'd overlooked, that had been under their noses all along. Robin shifted in her seat. Cody's pen froze mid-scribble. Janelle leaned forward. Even the reporters in the back paused, pens hovering over pads. This was no longer a fight over words or witness testimony. This was cold, unassailable evidence, digital, paper, and undeniably binding. Every ledger, every wire transfer, every internal memo Mary had meticulously collected wasn't just proof. It was a revelation, a dismantling of decades of carefully constructed illusion. Mary took a slow breath. "There's one other thing I need to submit," she said, stepping closer to the judge. The weight behind her words made the courtroom hold its collective breath. With calm precision, she handed him a printout. The judge accepted it, flipping the pages with an intensity that mirrored the tension in the room. "It's a recovered email thread," Mary explained, "between Cody, Robin, and an Arizona tax attorney. I wasn't CC'd, but it was accidentally sent to my old Gmail account from when we were securing the initial Las Vegas property." The judge's eyes narrowed as he scanned the pages. Mary continued, her voice steady, each word cutting through the tension like steel. "In this email, Cody calls Christine, Janelle, and me non-equity participants. He states Robin alone is legally eligible for asset protection designation, and the rest of us have consented to act as pass-through figures for estate planning purposes." The room went ice cold. Christine gasped audibly. Janelle muttered under her breath, "Pass-through?" Robin shifted uncomfortably, fully aware of her vulnerability now exposed. The judge's gavel rested mid-air as Cody's lawyer stammered, "Your Honor, it's hypothetical. A draft, merely a planning discussion." The judge raised a single hand, silencing him. "This indicates intent," he said, voice unwavering. "If the intent is to deliberately block 3 wives from accessing marital property while using their names and credit, that is actionable under the law." Not hypothetical, actionable. Mary's shoulders squared. Her steel-laced voice resonated through the gallery. "I trusted the family. I thought love meant sacrifice. That my suffering was an acceptable offering to keep the illusion alive. But behind the scenes, they weren't protecting the family. They were secretly remaking it, financially and legally, with Robin at the center." The judge turned to Cody, piercing gaze fixed. "Do you deny sending this email?" Cody remained silent. Robin avoided his eyes. The judge instructed the bailiff, "Enter this into the record. Mark it for state fraud examination." Finally, a tension in Mary's shoulders eased. Not relief, but recognition. The burden she had carried in silence was now visible, undeniable, and irrefutable. The courtroom's focus had shifted. Christine, Robin, no, the entire gallery now stared at Mary, the quiet force who had waited, calculated, and chosen the perfect moment to dispense justice, one document at a time. As the email exchange was formally admitted into evidence, the narrative had shifted irrevocably. Cody, once the orchestrator of every spiritual and financial maneuver in the family, was no longer the voice of authority. He was the defendant. Christine's binder, once the symbol of her case, now seemed almost ceremonial. Mary's plain, unassuming folder, the one she had kept hidden for years, was the wrecking ball that shattered the facade of the Brown family dynasty. The judge's voice rang steady but firm. Do you still assert that all your wives were aware of the legal agreements concerning the Flagstaff property and family assets? Cody attempted his trademark half-smile, the one he had relied upon for years to deflect blame. "I did what I thought was best for the family," he murmured. Christine, trembling but unbroken, fired back. "You isolated us one by one, fed us half-truths, and manipulated our trust. You used Robin as a shield, made us complicit through guilt, and hid everything behind the guise of spiritual authority." The room erupted. The judge pounded his gavel once. Cody growled, "You have no idea the stress I've borne managing this family." Mary rose again, calm, precise, commanding silence with her very presence. Her voice, low but cutting, set the courtroom on edge. This wasn't anger. This was truth delivered with purpose. Mary's eyes locked onto Cody, steady, unyielding. "You bore stress," she said, her voice quiet but cutting. "Not because you were protecting us. You were protecting yourself from the very beginning, the moment we became liabilities instead of assets." Cody spun defensive. "You're angry, Mary. You've been angry since the catfish incident." "This is revenge." Mary didn't flinch. She tilted her head, calm, resolute. "Revenge?" she asked. "No, this isn't revenge. This is truth, something you've never allowed me to have without penalty." She turned to the judge, her hands pulling one last document from the folder. A notarized affidavit from the Brown Family Holdings accountant from 2019. This confirms that Cody instructed them to reassign shared income as consulting fees in Robin's name to minimize marital tax liability. The courtroom froze. Christine gasped. Janelle's eyes widened. Robin recoiled, a visible shudder running through her. This was not spiritual favoritism. This was financial funneling. Mary's voice rang out with precision. "All three of us contributed to that income, through the show, the books, the brand. But only I received direct deposit from the consulting account. Robin." Cody went pale, stiffened, blood draining from his face. "Your Honor," Mary continued, voice like a gavel, "you wanted to know my role? I was the quiet wife, the name on the line, the obedient buffer. Today I am no longer a shield." The judge nodded. "Your position is clear, Mrs. Brown. This court will initiate a forensic audit of all family accounts, including Brown Family Holdings and Robin Brown, LLC." The murmurs in the courtroom were palpable. Mary had just detonated a legal earthquake. And then she raised a smaller, unassuming folder, a device hidden since 2021. "This is a recording," she said softly, "of a conversation with Cody and Robin. I recorded it to safeguard myself." The bailiff set it up. Cody's voice, low and hurried, filled the room. "We'll tell the others it's just a holding account. They won't care about the tax info. Christine doesn't read her mail. Janelle won't question it. And Mary," Robin's voice cut in, anxious. "What about Mary?" Cody's words fell like a hammer. "She's committed. She won't interfere. She still believes I'll come back to her." The room was silent. Janelle groaned. Christine's hand covered her mouth. Robin went pale. Mary's eyes glistened, voice shaking, but not with fear. "I lasted so long because I hoped. I thought if I waited, if I didn't push, he'd make me his again. But now I know I was never his wife. I was his policy." The audio continued, exposing Cody's plotting, manipulating accounts, identities, and emotional allegiances like cards in a rigged game. The judge's eyes narrowed. This is no longer a domestic dispute. This is coordinated financial misrepresentation, coercion, and abuse of legal authority under spiritual guise. Mary's expression never faltered. Christine nodded. Janelle crossed her arms. Robin looked sick. Cody's sweat glistened. The judge continued. "We will proceed to an official evidentiary hearing. A third-party forensic accountant with no ties to the family or show will audit all accounts. Additionally, this case will be referred to the Arizona Attorney General's office for review." Cody's lawyer whispered for mediation. Denied. "Trust has been weaponized, not respected," the judge snapped. Mary drew a final deep breath, producing a manila envelope. A letter from TLC's legal department sent only to Robin, granting her retroactive producing credits and financial bonuses based on narrative control. The room gasped. Mary's voice was calm, deliberate. Robin wasn't just a wife. She was an executive gatekeeper, paid more whenever the rest of us appeared emotional, ignorant, or disheveled. We weren't written out of the marriage. We were written out of the business. The judge leaned forward. All accounts tied to Brown Family Holdings and Robin Brown Enterprises are frozen pending full financial review. murmurs erupted. Robin's face turned white. Cody paled. Christine's eyes closed in silent acknowledgement. But Mary, composed, serene, had achieved what years of silence could not. The court, the evidence, and the women who had been silenced now belonged to her voice. The session concluded after a brief recess. Outside, journalists typed furiously. Fraud, frozen accounts, and executive collusion were the headlines. But inside, the courtroom witnessed something far larger. Mary Brown, quiet, overlooked, underestimated, had rewritten the story. Not as the wife Cody had forgotten, but as the woman who remembered everything and would never be silenced again. The judge's final words echoed as the gavels fell. All financial activity involving Brown Family Holdings or its affiliates is enjoined. This court is adjourned. Mary walked out, not just a wife wronged, but a force that rewrote decades of deception. Her voice, quiet yet unyielding, had become louder than any contract, louder than any tear, louder than Cody's entire legacy. And it would never be silenced. And it would never be silenced.